For obvious reasons, maintaining compliance and qualifications is of the utmost importance when it comes to recruiting for clinical roles. But hiring managers in HR typically get caught up in the common bottlenecks, extending out the recruitment process much longer than it really needs to be. SHRM's director, Amber Clayton, and board member from the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, Desiree Hodges, are both coming on to discuss some much needed strategies to speed up that screening process while keeping certification requirements top of mind. Let's get into it. I want to feed into this next part, and we kind of talked about it a little bit in the intro, talking about ghosting and turnover time in the recruitment process, but strategies to speed up the screening process while keeping certification requirements top of mind, which very obviously is super important within the healthcare space. So Desiree, we'll start with you. What are some common bottlenecks healthcare organizations often come across in the hiring process for clinical roles?
So, validating some of the credentials for our advanced practitioners, that is a huge bottleneck. Like we can, get them recruited and interviewed and hired, and then the credentialing takes months. And that can weeks, sometimes depending on the area that they're going into. And I think that's one of them. Another bottleneck that I see, because we do a lot of the recruiters, they do a lot of sourcing. I've been learning what sourcing is. It is a word, but it is a big word in talent acquisition. So the nurses were all like, what does that mean exactly? Sourcing. And just to give some historical background, my department used to sit under nursing. And then we got moved under talent acquisition for obvious reasons, because that's who we worked with all the time. And we had a little bit more access to certain things over in the people and culture space. So we're learning all about sourcing. So I think that we're casting wide nets and things like that. And so I think before we didn't have dedicated sourcers, and now we do, which is amazing. And so I can see that bottleneck opening up a little bit, because they can really, that net that's been cast so wide, they can narrow things down to get so the recruiter can actually do an appropriate screening of the candidates. So we know that they're qualified. We know that they've met the minimum requirements. And so then once they're passed off to the team for interviews, we're interviewing a quality candidate. And so we're just looking to see, what are you bringing to us? How can we enhance your life as well, to make sure that is a mutual fit. So it's gotten so much better and has helped with expediting that hiring process, because I always tell the team it's a difference between being fast and efficient. Yes. We don't want to be fast necessarily, because we don't want to miss something and not validate credentials and not do all of these different things and really do a skills assessment, because right now, we have people from all over with different experience levels applying for roles, and the skills sometimes aren't there. There's different sizes of facilities. There's different acuities in facilities. And you have to think about, what does my education infrastructure look like? How many preceptors am I going to have available? So I don't want to just pile people into a unit and they're not going to get a great onboarding experience, because that will cause turnover as well. So it's really looking at all of those different things. And so our team works very closely with both talent, the recruiters and the unit leaders to say, this is what we've got. Can we make this work? And things like that. So I think that bottleneck has opened up. Having dedicated sourcers helps with that. And also understanding and knowing the departments and what the needs are. How many experienced people do you have here? Can you take new ones? Can you take more experienced ones? And all of those different things. So really understanding whether you have a person like a senior nursing hiring manager, or if you're the recruiter, communicating directly with the unit leader, understanding what those needs are. And so you're just not sending people, and that it is meaningful. The candidate that you're sending, it is a meaning. Like when you receive a candidate as a manager, when I was a nurse manager of the unit, I knew when my recruiter sent me somebody, I'm probably going to hire that person, because we had that relationship. She knew my unit, she knew my needs. And so I think that's the relationship that you build, and then that bottleneck won't be there.
I love that you highlighted how you guys are in constant communication, right? There's a lot of moving parts within the talent acquisition and the recruitment side of things, but you guys are
Yeah.
all communicating, and especially within those larger organizations, I think that's really important. I want to highlight this next slide that we have here, talking a little bit about fixing those common hiring bottlenecks. And this is from an article from Vizient. And, looking at a couple of these points, talking about control the number of job openings beyond a certain time frame to reduce workload. This kind of feeds in, I think, with those smaller organizations, again, those mom and pop type healthcare shops. And I think that it's really important to consolidate and making sure that, hey, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And even if you have 2 people on the recruiting side of things, or even if it's just a lone HR person doing all of it, making sure that it's something that you can do within a certain time frame, and consolidating all of those job openings, those job postings that you wrote, and again, making sure you're hiring the right people, hiring really quality candidates. Another one is consider allowing recruiters to negotiate job offers rather than hiring managers. Recruiters may have additional training to help ensure greater consistency across offers. Again, somebody who really specializes in this, I think it's really important to make sure you're bringing in the right people on the internal side of the team to make sure that, hey, they have a really good grasp on negotiating job offers or salaries here. Let's have them focus on this. This last point I think is really fantastic. Take time to survey new hires' experiences for key metrics such as ease in navigating an application website, time from application to offer, and quality of job description and requirements. This is something where, we have launched our applicant tracking system on workforce side of things. We want to make this a lot easier. This last point really speaks to the applicant side of our product. And again, making sure that people who are coming through the door are quality, and it's really easy for the hiring manager, the recruiter, the lone HR manager to sift through all of those applications and making sure, hey, we have some really great people here. Let's let them proceed on, or this is where this stops here. We're going to get rid of this application and thank them for their time accordingly. Because again, treat others the way you'd want to be treated, making sure we're over communicating, if anything. Amber, what are your thoughts on, hiring bottlenecks as somebody who has been in the healthcare space? Did any of these speak to you? Is this something that you've come across?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked in urgent care, pediatrics, and hospice, and recruited for the nurses, the CNAs, the CMAs, and other positions, other specialty positions. And, it was a challenge. We had situations where background checks, sometimes depending on the area that they were in, they had manual processes maybe in their courts. And so it took a little bit longer to get criminal background checks, for example. We also had to get DMV checks on our employees because they were doing home hospice. So they were driving their vehicles as well. So the background check did take a while. I think what some employers can do is make sure that when you have your job postings, your job listings, that you have all the information on there about what's required for the position, so that the candidate knows up front, what it is that they need in order to have a position with the organization. And then also too, some employers will outsource. They'll use another organization to conduct the background checks to make it easier on the employer. I hope many of them do. It's just, administratively that could be a burden, and to have, more people working on those is probably going to expedite the process a little bit more than doing it yourself. And then also too, some employers work with agencies who already do that for them. So they've already taken the time to actually do all of those things ahead of time. The other thing is technology too. With applicant tracking systems, with AI, you're able to, filter through some of those resumes and applications that don't meet the minimum requirements of the position. You have to just be cautious of course, with AI, is that you're not inadvertently discriminating against anyone based on a protected class by the filters that you're putting into the system. We're human. We're the ones that are putting those in there. So you just have to be careful to make sure that everyone is having an equal opportunity to be able to apply for the jobs. But again, that can help streamline some of it as well. And I just wanted to just mention too, you had said something about streamlining the application process. And in our talent trends report, we actually had under healthcare and social assistance that that was one of the things that many of the employers were doing. They were, I think it was, and if you can give me one moment, let me see if I can bring this up. So 48% of healthcare and social assistance companies were streamlining their application process to make it easier to complete versus 37% for all industries. So that's, a pretty big difference between all industries and healthcare. Another thing that some of the healthcare and social assistance organizations were doing were collaborating with educational institutions too. 49% of healthcare social assistants were doing that versus 37% for all industries. So, yeah, so those are some, big differences just because of the nature of the work and the challenges that, these healthcare organizations have.
Absolutely. And again, I think you brought up a good point, leaning a little bit on technology. Desiree, I don't know if Novant does that, but do you guys use any automation, any technology when you guys are sifting through applicants, the screening process, anything like that?
I think they do.
Mhm.
I get them on the back end, but I'm sure, yes, I think there's some automation I mean, I would hope.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Thousands of applicants, so yeah.
We're, as we're in the midst of tax season, right? I was thinking about this analogy, right? It's like having your taxes sent out or doing it on like Free Tax USA and trying to sift through all that information as it goes just right over everybody's head. And it's something where it's a nice to have. Absolutely. It's a nice to have when you have automation, you have technology in your back pocket, but the time saved on your side and the stress that it saves you is there's nothing better than that, truly. Thank you so much for watching that segment from our webinar on how to improve recruitment of clinical roles in healthcare. If you'd like to watch the full webinar, click this video here and be sure to subscribe for more content like this.